A top focus, the Israeli Prime Minister said on Monday a date was set for an invasion of Rafah. Now, Rafah is the last refuge for Palestinian civilians displaced by relentless bombardments that have flattened their home neighborhoods. Israel says it is also the last significant redoubt of Hamas combat units. More than 1 million people are crammed into the southern city in desperate conditions, short of food, water and shelter. Foreign governments and organizations have urged Israel against storming Rafah for fears of a bloodbath. In Jerusalem, Netanyahu said, and I'm quoting him here, "Victory requires entry into Rafah and elimination of the terrorist battalions there. It will happen there," is a date. However, he did not specify the date. Far-right ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich announced Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to reduce military presence in Gaza. Ben-Gvir said if Netanyahu decides to end the war without a large-scale offensive in Rafah to defeat Hamas, he will not have a mandate to continue serving as Prime Minister. Hundreds of residents who had been living in tents in Rafah ventured back to the devastated home areas on Monday following the Israeli pullback. Some rode on donkey carts, rickshaws and open-deck vehicles, while some just walked. Palestinian medical officials said their teams had recovered more than 80 bodies from areas where the soldiers operated in the past months. Eid al-Fitr, the feast that ends Islam's fasting lunar month of Ramadan, is expected in Gaza on Wednesday, depending on a clear sighting of the moon. But there is little to cheer for the Palestinians, in fact, this year. Some hospitals have reported kids dying of malnutrition and starvation since last month and have warned of other preventable deaths because key supplies are lacking. Now, the international pressure on Israel to let more aid into Gaza increased last week after airstrikes targeted a relief convoy and killed 7 aid workers. In response to the pressure, Tel Aviv said it had approved the reopening of the Erez crossing into North Gaza and the temporary use of Ashdod port in South Israel. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid visited Washington for high-level talks. He said a deal to release hostages held in Gaza is difficult but doable. The former Prime Minister's Washington visit comes as Benjamin Netanyahu faces pressure at home and overseas. Fellow opposition politician Benny Gantz, who unlike Lapid is part of Netanyahu's war cabinet, last week called for national elections to take place in September. Lapid asked about the call, declined to speak about Israeli politics while in the United States. Listen to this.
I feel uncomfortable, if you excuse me, to discuss Israeli politics standing opposite the State Department. I will have enough time to do this in Israel if you'll come over and ask the question again.
Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi, former House Speaker and key Biden ally, signed a letter on Friday from dozens of congressional Democrats to President and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Now, they urged a halt to weapons transfers to Israel. Support from Pelosi, a veteran member of Biden's Democratic Party, for stopping the transfer of weapons showed the view is increasingly becoming mainstream in the party. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren argued Friday there is ample evidence that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Warren said it is wrong to starve kids in a civilian population in order to try to bend them to your will. It is wrong to drop 2,000-pound bombs in densely populated areas. She added, if you want to do it as an application of law, I believe that they'll find that it is genocide and they have ample evidence to do so. Well, to get you more on the latest truce talks, our correspondent Jody Cohen sent us this report from Renana. Listen in.
Hamas appeared to reject the latest proposal, but now a Hamas official has said that they're examining it further. Now, the proposal reportedly has gone further than previous offers, none of which Hamas accepted. The latest involves Hamas returning 40 of the 133 hostages. Now, these 40 would be women, men over 50, or younger men with medical conditions, and they must be alive. In exchange, Israel would agree to a 6-week ceasefire and the early release of hundreds of Palestinian security prisoners, including many serving life sentences for murder. But according to reports, Hamas might not have 40 hostages who fit these categories who are still alive. Israel has reportedly suggested that Hamas then returns more men hostages and Israel would release more prisoners, and it's not clear if Hamas will agree. President Biden has asked Egypt and Qatar to put pressure on Hamas. Israel's envoy for the hostages is meeting with his US, British, German and Austrian counterparts, because remember, many of the hostages are citizens of these countries, and negotiations are set to continue.
In fact, if you listen further, she further elaborates on whether Prime Minister Netanyahu has set the date of a Rafah operation after Ben Gvir gave him an ultimatum. Here's what she had to say.
So after the IDF withdrew most of its troops from southern Gaza, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that the date has been set for IDF troops to enter Rafah. Now, this could be to keep Ben Gvir in the coalition. Ben Gvir said that if Netanyahu ends the war against Hamas without an extensive attack on Hamas in Rafah, that Netanyahu would cease to have a mandate to serve as Prime Minister. Or it could be a negotiating tactic for the hostage release talks, i.e. a message to Hamas to free more hostages or face military pressure in Rafah. Now, it's not clear when this could happen. Remember, Netanyahu has previously announced dates that were not implemented, such as the Ramadan deadline. It's also not clear what the operation could involve. It could mean a ground operation against Hamas, as Israel had been planning, or it could mean targeted raids against Hamas, like the IDF does in the West Bank, as the US would prefer. Now, Defense Minister Gallant had a call with Defense Secretary Austin. According to the US readout, Gallant briefed Austin on Israel's future plans against Hamas, and it remains to be seen what those plans are.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.